Try to get back to the Avs and the Nuggets as well, but I want to begin tonight with a couple of mock drafts that came out today. Mace, it felt like the mock drafts died down a little bit during free agency. Makes sense. Teams address their needs. Mocksters adjust their drafts of, oh, well, they filled that hole in free agency. That's no longer going to be a pursuit in the draft. Of course, for the Broncos, that doesn't really matter because we know they didn't sign a quarterback. They brought back Adam Troutman, but most people still think they need an upgrade at tight end, and there was two huge names in the scouting, drafting, mocking community, Mel Kiper Jr. and Daniel Jeremiah, who both dropped mock drafts today. They're third versions of their mock drafts as we get closer and closer to April 25th. And two very different directions. You wrote about it at denversports.com. Mel Kiper Jr. has the Broncos going Bo Nix. Daniel Jeremiah has the Broncos going Brock Bowers. I penned that one up on our website. What do you make of this conundrum? Because you know, Mace, going QB or going tight end, that's going to create all sorts of chatter in Broncos country on April 25th if that's the decision they're faced at 12.
Yeah, it's QB 5 or tight end 1. Brock Bowers, some have had him mocked as high as number 5, number 6 in the draft over the course of the last few months. The general consensus is he's a fairly special prospect as a tight end, someone who can make a lot of plays in space, but also can make some contested catches as well, even though Georgia schemed him open quite a bit. But the thing with tight end is, in terms of roster building, tight end doesn't necessarily have the greatest positional value because when you have a player on a rookie contract, the difference between the tight end on a first round contract and even a tight end playing on a top 5 deal, a franchise tag deal, is much less than the difference between a quarterback on that rookie deal and then a quarterback that's playing on either a franchise tag or is getting one of those big second contracts like we see around the league.
Sure.
So that's the equation here. Like, Brock Bowers is a pretty unique talent, but does he represent good positional value at 12? Not only compared with tight end, but also compared with edge rusher, where there's some depth, offensive tackle, wide receiver. Although the big 3 wide receivers in this draft are probably going to be off the board before the Broncos pick at number 12.
All right, so let's dive into this because I know you conducted a poll on your Twitter at Mace Denver. Hey, Brock Bowers, Bo Nix, who would you want him to take? And I know the polling has several thousand votes, and it's basically 50-50. Brock Bowers has a slight edge over Bo Nix. But the divide this would cause in Broncos country, if those big 4 QBs are gone, obviously including McCarthy, which we all are assuming they will be at 12, because I've said it from the jump, they have to take a quarterback in round 1. They can't go to bed that night without a quarterback. But I'm also not stubborn enough to realize that tight ends have started to change the NFL. You look at the 4 teams in the conference championship with George Kittle and Sam Laporta in the NFC, Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce in the AFC. All 4 teams had elite tight ends, and it's been a position of need really since Julius Thomas left town. Maybe Owen Daniels, Joel Dreesen, Jacob Tamme, some of those guys, but at least 6, 7, 8 years. There would be a real temptation to take Bowers if those top 4 QBs are off the board. I don't think we can discount that at all.
You can't discount it, but the question is that the right use of resources, especially when the question then becomes, okay, if you get Brock Bowers, who's getting him the football?
Right.
Because the when you had a tight end go near the top of the draft back in 2021, you had Kyle Pitts going to the Atlanta Falcons, number 4 overall, and he had a 1,000-yard season his first year with Matt Ryan at quarterback before the Falcons moved on from Matty Ice after that season. Since then, he barely has combined in 2 seasons, 356 in 2022 over 10 games, 667 in 2023 over 17 games working with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. So can you maximize Bowers' skill set if you are deficient at the quarterback position? This may be a scenario here where Brock Bowers is intriguing, but this may not represent the best allocation of resources for the Broncos at number 12.
Yeah, and I would agree with that overall. I've said for months and months with you on this program that they have to take a quarterback in round one, but I must now ask the question, can we get greedy? Can we get creative? Is there a way to assure after the NFL draft has gone through, let's say, 2 rounds, that Brock Bowers and either Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. is on this roster? I understand they don't have a second-round draft pick, and that's a huge roadblock into trading back up to the end of the first to get their guy, or even, frankly, trading up to the start of the second to get their guy. But how can we get, again, greedy in Broncos country that, hey, we don't have to debate Brock Bowers or Bo Nix? Is there a scenario, Mace, where we can be talking about Brock Bowers and Bo Nix, or Brock Bowers and Michael Penix Jr. as 2 Denver Broncos draft selections?
The problem is that if you want to get back into the second round, you'd have to deal from future capital. And sort of the way the general equation of trading in the draft works is that next year's second rounder is worth what a third rounder is this year. So basically, that's sort of the calculus, is that you deduct a round, or you deduct some points from a pick that's next year. You deduct even more points from a pick that's 2 years down the line, just because the NFL is kind of a win now place. And hey, 2 years from now, if you're a GM, you might not have a job in the NFL, or you might not have that same job that you have right now.
Right.
So that would be tough, because you could trade next year's second round pick, but effectively that would be the equivalent of trading a third round pick this year. So maybe you could take this year's third, next year's second, enough to get you where you want to go, especially if you're talking about probably needing to pick early in the second round to pick Bo Nix if by chance he falls into round 2.
Yeah, and that's all fair consideration there, and it's again, I'm sort of living here in this fantasy world almost, because it would be amazing to feel like you walked away with an elite tight end and a rookie quarterback, with all due respect. That's not Michael Pratt. That's not Spencer Rattler. Not one of these tier 2 guys, but still one of the big 6 that we have been talking about for, I don't know, 3 months now, basically since we knew the Broncos were going to miss the playoffs and move on from Russell Wilson. Is there any chance in your eyes that it's not a quarterback or Brock Bowers? Because we still see mocks that have them taking Terry and Arnold, the corner out of Alabama, or one of the edge rushers out of UCLA or Florida State. And I think Broncos country would lose its collective mind if this first-round pick is someone on defense, Mace. I'm curious your thoughts as someone who is close to the team. Could they get that wonky, at least in my eyes, and take a defender at number 12 overall?
No doubt they could.
Ugh.
Now, again, then it becomes a question of, like, what's the best value? Edge rusher is a good value pick traditionally at that range in the draft. And right now, in the Broncos outside linebacker room, they've got good rotational pieces, good pieces in there, but they lack that alpha at the top of the depth chart, right? You've got Baron Browning, who's shown some flashes, but has also dealt with injuries. Nick Bonito, who can make some plays off the edge in pass rush, but it's been a liability against the run the last couple of years. Jonathan Cooper, who is kind of your Mr. Steady and solid, always there, dependable, not necessarily spectacular. And then potentially moving Drew Sanders over from inside linebacker to edge, continuing that move that they made last year. But you don't have that number one primo guy in there. And so that's where somebody like Jared Verse, the edge rusher out of Florida State, could be tempting. The problem is that's going to be a very tough sell to the public. Let's say, for example, I was saying this to Cecil Lammey on Orange and Blue today this afternoon. If you have a quarterback room at training camp that is Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci, and Michael Pratt, What's the reaction of Broncos country going to be to that?
Not thrilled, because there's no one to get excited about. Even if you're the biggest Tulane fan in the world and you watched all the Michael Pratt games this year, you still didn't get one of the perceived top 6 quarterbacks in the draft. So maybe the kid goes out and kills it and changes some minds, but I guarantee you in July at camp there won't be a heck of a lot of excitement.
Yeah, and around the nation, the Broncos, it might be like the one of the opening scenes in the film Major League, where you've got Lou Brown standing in front of his Cleveland team and telling them, every newspaper has picked us to finish last.
Right.
That's what it's going to be like for the Broncos walking into Sanctuary Health Training Center. I think if that's your quarterback room, is by and large, there are going to be a great many people that expect this team to potentially bring up the rear of the league.
Oh, yeah. I saw ESPN had a piece yesterday, overreaction or not overreaction, and the statement was the Broncos will be in contention to pick number 1 overall, and they said not an overreaction. As we sit here today on March 19th, the Denver Broncos are absolutely in contention to pick number 1 overall in the 2025 NFL draft, because all you have to do is look at their quarterback room, and it's the worst in the NFL. So, I know Chicago traded Justin Fields, but they'll add Caleb Williams to their room. So unless the Broncos make a major trade up, which I don't think many folks see coming at this point, they will probably enter training camp with the worst quarterback room in the NFL, and worst quarterback room in the NFL is a pretty darn good recipe to earn yourself the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, especially in a division where you've got Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert.
Right.
And in a conference where you also have C.J. Stroud, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, and Tua Tagovailoa, and even Aaron Rodgers, the Jets trying to wring one more season out of him. And I haven't even mentioned Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, who had them in the playoffs in the divisional round just 14 months ago.
Sure.
Yeah, it's at this moment, you've got to really squint to be optimistic about the outlook of this team. I mean, I don't think they're ultimately going to be in contention for the worst pick. I think Sean Payton and his staff will probably scheme this team and use the ability to win at the margins on special teams, for example, to eke out 5. But it doesn't seem like a pleasant season is incoming based on the roster that they've got right now.
Yeah, you can read about these mock drafts at denversports.com. Let's move on to some other big news today, and that, of course, was Jerry Jeudy getting a bag from the Cleveland Browns, a very unexpected bag, kind of came out of nowhere. You thought maybe they'd just make him finish his deal out and then talk extension, but apparently they're high on Jerry Jeudy, wanted to make sure they get him locked up. He gets $41 million guaranteed, up to $58 million overall, gets a few years tacked onto that deal. Mace, the reaction from Broncos country to this was massive, massive overpay, just like the Browns overpaid Deshaun Watson. But this deal, and Jerry Jeudy caught 2 touchdowns last year. He had a season with 0 touchdowns. I'm not trying to be disrespectful because he's not my favorite guy in the world, but this deal, even just from a football standpoint, take all the personal stuff and picking fights with Steve Smith out of it and getting arrested and spending a night in jail and all that, this deal from a football sense just makes no sense, correct? This just feels like Cleveland doing wacky things once again, and the rest of the NFL going, what in the world are the Browns doing?
Well, at the same time, though, receivers' contracts are getting more expensive. I mean, you see the $58 million number over 3 years. That gives him an average per year value of $19.33 million. That's 17th among NFL wide receivers.
He's not the 17th best receiver. He's not even close to the 17th best receiver in the NFL.
Well, no, but you've got rookie contracts that are, factoring into ranking the receiver 96 or 128 or whatever, however deep you want to go.
But he has 3 touchdowns in three or fewer touchdowns in 3 of his 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And the only reason he has 6 touchdowns last year or 2 years ago was because he didn't get ejected against the Chiefs and then caught 3 touchdowns. So I'm talking about a guy with 11 career touchdowns getting $58 million. And if the refs had kicked him out like they should have, he'd have 8 touchdowns in 4 years and average 2 per year. He was a colossal bust in Denver. They were lucky to get a couple of picks for him. And the Browns are out of their minds for doing this contract. They just are. And that's my opinion. I respect that you disagree with it, but I think this is an insane amount of money to give to Jerry Jeudy.
Well, I think also just rationalize it from their perspective. They believe their environment is going to maximize Jerry Jeudy. They believe that they're going to offer something different than he had in Denver. Part of it is probably having Amari Cooper in there, somebody he has long respected and admired. It's really interesting that that Judy's contract gets done and puts him into Amari Cooper territory. The questions that are coming out of Cleveland out of this are, okay, this contract is fine, but what are they going to do when it comes time to pay Amari? And are they going to pay both Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy?
Right. And as of now, it would be a little silly to pick Jerry Jeudy over Amari Cooper based on their resumes. I understand Amari Cooper is a little bit older, but it's not like Judy's this guy who flashed all this potential in Denver. He was better at TikTok than he was at football. That's all I'm saying at the end of the day, is that I think Broncos fans view him as, I don't know, one of the top 10 busts in the history of the franchise based on where he was drafted as a wide receiver, that place in Broncos history, expectations, and then more fights on social media with, legends, Shannon Sharp and Rod Smith, and getting into it with our own Philip Lindsay, and then picking fights with Steve Smith before the NFL Network before the Chiefs game. Like, I think we probably had more stories at denversports.com about Jerry Jeudy headaches than we had about performance, and we're not looking to stir the pot. We're just passing on the news, and the news was generally not football related, and it generally was not good.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's funny, among the things that he struggles with, he's good at the TikToks, but he's not necessarily good at tweeting.
Fill us in on this. This is good.
Well, the first thing you think of when you think of Jerry Jeudy on Twitter is the "at least I got my conditioning in" tweet after the Kansas City game in 2020 when he had one catch and the Broncos lost. That was Drew Locke at quarterback. But he put out a tweet a little over an hour ago, a post on X, whatever you want to call it. And obviously he's got the rabbit ears up on people saying that he's never had 1,000-yard season.
Right.
Because he tweets, LOL, 972, missed 6 games. There you go. You're 1,000. 2 laughing, crying face emojis. Here's the problem with that. The year that he had 972 yards in 2022, he missed 2 games, not 6 games. In fact, he has not played a season in his career in which he has missed exactly 6 games. He played every game in 2020. He missed 7 games in 2021, had a season. He missed 2 games in 2022. He missed 1 game last year.
Okay, so
where is he getting 6 games from in any vein, let alone in that year where he has 972 and he missed 2? Now, that being said, if he played all 17 games, or if he'd even played an old 16-game schedule, yeah, he was on pace for 1,000. But still, it's just another log on the fire, right? There are, things like that where you start thinking about attention to detail, right? And when we all have gaffes on social media, the problem is with Jerry Jeudy, it's a pattern, right? He's had over the years.
He just changed the NFL season to 21 games, is what he did. In a year, he played 15 games and caught 972 yards. Like you said, he's got the rabbit ears up. He said he missed 6 games when he actually missed 2. So he doesn't understand that 17 minus 15 is 2, and it's not 21 minus 15 is 6. He's just bad at math, I guess, too. I mean, it's another example of Jerry Jeudy just not getting it on social media, and then he'll probably fight with someone about it in an hour.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to see if he's had any responses yet to this, and oh my gosh.
He's not our problem anymore. He's not our headache anymore. That's all I can say. Jerry Jeudy is a Cleveland Brown, a very rich member of the Cleveland Browns. Hey, guys, while we're at it, if you could help us out on YouTube, we would appreciate it. Maybe go search Denver Sports on YouTube. Like a video, leave a comment, share, or most importantly, if you could subscribe, that would help us out. Denver Sports on YouTube. All right.